Hello and welcome to another episode of Zealous Talks, the tech podcast where we provide the latest insights from the world of technology. I'm Kinjal, your host for the show. Today we'll be discussing a highly talked about and trending topic, artificial intelligence and the recruitment. Is it a hype or a real game changer? To provide us with the valuable insights, we have invited a very special guest. He's the founder of two thriving ventures, TNG Media and the Nudge Group, and an expert in the field of recruitment technology. Please welcome Steve to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Sorry it's taken so long to organize.
Yeah, so Steve, tell us about yourself and your two ventures.
Tell you about myself. Goodness, how much do you want to know? I guess from a business perspective and in terms of what you're talking about, technology and so forth. So I've been in technology recruitment since, oh my gosh, 25 years now, a very long time. Right now, my main focus is on the Nudge Group, and the Nudge Group does recruitment within the startup sector. So startups, scale-ups, sometimes private equity-backed companies, anyone who's going through big growth. And we do that globally. We've got offices in Sydney, Australia, where I am today. We've got them in Singapore. We've got them in London. And we also operate all throughout the world. We do a lot of recruitment in the US and all throughout Asia as well. And what comes alongside that is we create a lot of content, and we have a Nudge Productions and TNG Media. So we have a media part of that, and we tell a lot of stories, really to help founders articulate what it is they're doing. And we do that through podcasts and documentaries and all sorts of things like that.
Oh, that's nice. That's good to know. So when we talk about the recruitment thing in the Nudge Group, can you tell us about AI in the context of recruitment? Something about AI.
Something about AI. So it's really interesting. Just even since we spoke, when was it? Maybe a month ago, initially when you first approached me, I've had meetings with all sorts of AI businesses and that are sort of coming into that recruitment space. You know, I think most people think of AI in recruitment to be matching. So, you know, looking at a job description and then looking at a resume and doing it super quickly, or a LinkedIn profile and matching the best candidates and removing bias around age, race, height, gender, all those, you know, even education to some degree, all those things, and really trying to match people into jobs. Now, from an AI perspective, people have been trying to do that for ages, and you can do it a lot better than you could prior. But as everybody knows, AI is programmed by humans and it learns off humans. So you tend to get the same biases, unconscious biases that you do by the people that create it. And there's not really a way to sort of solve that. And what it hasn't been able to do, and I'm assuming it will one day, is the people aspect of it. You know, it's great to have the best person in the job as far as the matching goes, but if they don't get on with their team and they can't work cohesively, then they probably can't do the job as well. You know, on paper, it's not the same as actually in real life. And I think that's how most people would view AI in recruitment. But in so many other ways now, AI is coming into the recruitment space in different aspects of it. You know, we can look at what we do, the media aspect. Obviously, people can now create content of themselves to tell their own stories, and they can use AI to do that, which is super fascinating. And they can, resumes are being written by AI now, and LinkedIn profiles are being written by AI, and messages to recruiters and messages, you know, cover letters, and when recruiters approach people, AI is coming into all of that. And I just think it's going to keep coming into different new spaces all over the space. But it's coming. That is for sure.
So AI is being used from both the sides, the recruiters and the one who wants to get employed, right? You currently talked about the unconscious bias. I guess that happens in the traditional recruitment. Can you give an overview of that, some insights? How was it like?
Unconscious bias. So
Yeah.
I have some controversial views on unconscious bias. I mean, unconscious bias is where people have views that they are maybe not consciously aware of around people when they are assessing their resumes usually, or even when they meet them. And we do it not just as recruiters, everybody does it in every aspect. And that unconscious bias tends to come from your upbringing, your parents, where you grow up, you know, your country, all those kinds of things. And there is a theory that we should remove unconscious bias because someone grows up in a certain area, another person grows up in another area, and they have views on each other, which may not be true and may not be founded. And that's what unconscious bias is. And that can sometimes limit people's opportunities or give the wrong people opportunities because of that. And the unconscious part is that people don't even realize they're doing it. It's just sort of instilled in their belief system as a child, and obviously through what happens to them in their life. Is that what you meant?
You meant that it's the preconceived notions that people are having, which are not right when we are recruiting someone. Like,
Yeah, they could be wrong. But my view on this is kind of controversial in that a lot of people think we should be removing that. You know, there are people that believe women aren't as good as men. There are people that believe people from certain parts of the world are better. There are people that believe certain schools are better. There are people who believe certain age groups are better, and so forth. And you know, you can't use that rule across everybody. It's just simply not true. But my view on it is that as much as unconscious bias is not a great thing, when you end up working with that person, if you still got that belief system and you have employed someone that you have a view about, it can actually impact the way that those two people will work together. Now, I'm not saying unconscious bias can't change, because belief systems can change, but everybody knows it's incredibly hard to change beliefs as much as you may want it. It takes a long time. So to some degree, even though unconscious bias can be limiting for some people in an unfair way, at the same time, if you remove that and put those two people together, that unconscious bias will still come back. So if you take the unconscious bias away from the recruitment process so that it is a fair process and everyone gets assessed, you know, in the same way, which is really what should happen. But if you do that, the person that gets the role might then not be able to work with the person that was actually hiring them, because that unconscious bias will still rear its head again. You know, you can remove it from the recruitment process, but you can't remove it from the workplace.
right.
So to some degree, I actually think it's quite important to have unconscious bias to build cohesive teams, unless everyone's going to change their belief system, which we know is inherently difficult to do. So yeah, it's not a simple clear cut, we should just remove it. I actually think that there's a lot of good in that in terms of building teams that work effectively together, and we all know that teams work better than individuals. So people won't like me for saying that, but that is what I believe.
So yeah, we can remove it from recruitment process, but it depends on the mindset after all, what mindset you are carrying on when you work on the team, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that, you know, you can't remove it from the workplace. It's always going to be there. So in some respects, I feel it should be part of to a point. I mean, obviously there are some very unhealthy, and I think when you have a conscious bias, that can be very damaging. You know, if someone genuinely believes something that is just factually not true, but it's not
Right.
unconscious, it's a conscious decision, I think that should be removed. So I think they're quite different. You know, unconscious and conscious bias are quite different.
Okay, so that was what traditional recruitment looked like. So if we come back to the modern recruitment, how this thing is solved, or all the other loops are solved with the use of artificial intelligence. Like,
Yeah, I mean, the idea. Sorry, go on.
is it really helpful?
The AI tools, removing it. Look,
Yeah.
I mean, I think AI will become most useful in recruitment, like in nearly every other industry. And you know, everybody's got these views on what AI will do to the workplace. There's no question it's going to change the workplace. Recruitment is part of the workplace, so it will change recruitment as well. But like most roles, AI is not going to replace the people doing the jobs. What it should do is enhance their ability. And it can do that because it can churn through data at a pace that no human can ever do. So I think right now, if you look at how AI is working in recruitment effectively, it's really that initial screening, that initial matching, where you may have, so for example, right now, there's a lot of candidates around and not that many jobs. I mean, the market swings back and forth, but that's sort of where it is right now. And I think if you've got 500 people applying for a role, to sit there and look through each resume is a very laborious and sort of long process. Whereas an AI can do it like that and take it down to 20, that, you know, and then look through those 20. And I think that's probably where it's working really well in recruitment. And what people are trying to do is they're trying to take it to that next level, which is proving quite challenging because it's such a people business. And as we know, human beings are the most complex things on the planet.
Right. Okay, so when we talk about this, can you tell about the nudge group's approach to global talent acquisition? Like, how do you approach this?
So from an AI perspective or just generally?
Uh, like, how do you leverage AI in your recruitment processes?
So I think we use it in probably two or three different ways.
Okay.
Right now, it's incredibly quick in terms of writing us job adverts and things like that. I think in that respect, it can really shortcut a lot of tasks that you sort of have to do that are repetitive. And that would apply to any industry, right? You've got to write some sort of documentation. But it's very, very good at that. But we are using it to a degree of some matching, just like I spoke to you about. Like if you have a job advertisement up and you get 20 people, you're probably just going to look through those 20 people. But if you have a job advertisement up like we do now and you get 700 people, we can use AI to bring that down to maybe a number of 100 or 75 or sort of manageable number almost instantaneously, right? Which would have taken us potentially an entire day to do that. And I think in that respect, it's incredibly, incredibly useful. You can also, and we haven't really delved into this, but we're beginning to. We work in the startup and scale up space, as I mentioned to you now. It's quite difficult to get AI effective in this space because if you think about hiring for a bank, for example, you have a large bank, they tend to hire a persona of the kind of person that will fit that bank, and you can easily program that into an AI. With startups and scale ups, because the jobs are so varied, they're often not documented. There's
Mm-hmm.
really very little I guess, standardization going on. You may come in to do a finance role, but find you're also doing sales and marketing at the same time. You may come in to work on a particular product, but then find you're working on 5 other products that have launched in the last week because it's so changing and so varied.
Yeah.
And because the kind of individual that you need from a personality point of view changes. If you think about a startup, an early stage startup needs someone that understands ambiguity, likes ambiguity, and can work in multiple roles. Whereas a later stage startup would need someone that's very specialized on a particular kind of person. So they're two very different types of personalities. AI has not found a way of being able to do that effectively yet. I'm sure it will. So for us, it's really difficult to use it. I'm dying for it to happen. But I think where it's going to really come positively good in probably this year, I think, is the way candidates actually look for jobs. And I think if you go onto a LinkedIn and look at all the jobs, you may get, I don't know if it's, let's say you put in product manager, you may get 400 jobs. Again, just like looking at resumes, you don't want to look at 400 jobs. And I think the candidate side using AI to find the right jobs for them, which they can program in and it can search on the web, thousands of job sites and thousands of different sources of data to get them a small amount of jobs that they can focus on applying for. I actually think it's going to be far more effective from that side as opposed to the recruiter side.
So that comes to from candidate sides, it's more effective, more useful AI, and right now AI is not as effective from the recruiter side, right?
Not yet, because there's not for us. I think if you were an agent, and I've had previous companies before where if you were recruiting for government, where it's a pretty standardized sort of process that they go through, or if you're recruiting for a large organization where a business analyst is a business analyst, it doesn't really matter. I think it's really useful. But for us at Nudge, because we're so specialized in such a quirky area, it's a little bit more difficult to get it to work effectively for us.
Okay, so you said that in startups it becomes difficult because we have to go by the personality, but in large organization they have a standardized process, standardized recruitment requirements. So AI is very much helpful. So can you give us insight that how AI assesses the resumes and the requirements, and then jots down that who is best or who is not? AI is not able to judge that effectively because too many things are changing. But when we talk about large organizations or government thing, there is a standardized process and requirements. So AI does that job effectively to find out who is the right candidate. So can you give us insight how AI assesses that? What is the process?
So I think if you're doing recruitment for a bank or government, as we've sort of spoken about, there will be a selection criteria within the job description that is very
Okay.
standardization, and it can look for those words and those phrases, and it can easily look for those in a resume because resumes or those kinds of roles tend to be very standardized in the way they're written. You have your responsibilities and you have your achievements, and on a job description, you'll have your responsibilities, and then you'll have what they want you to achieve. So it just really matches those up, and it can do that incredibly quickly and go through thousands and thousands of resumes in seconds. When you've got a process that's very structured like that, it's fantastic. It'll go through that almost automatically. In fact, to some degree now, it really happens as they apply. So as someone's applying for the job, the AI is actually measuring their success. And by the time they finish their application, it's already made a decision as to whether or not that person is suitable for the role. So, I mean, the speed of that is just next level.
That saves a lot of time, right?
Enormous amounts.
So can you name some companies that are really using AI in the recruitment, just dependent on AI or mostly?
Yeah, there's an interesting story about this actually. I don't know if you've heard the Amazon story, but Amazon decided to use AI for all of their recruitment and almost remove humans. And it was a disaster. And I'll tell you what, it was a disaster. And that was because, and this comes back to that unconscious bias thing, right? It's because what happened was the AI looked at Amazon and said, okay, this is one of the most successful companies in the world. Who works there? And it worked out that 70% or 80% of the staff were white middle-aged men. So the AI thought, okay, well, then that's what we should apply. We should just employ white middle-aged men, which was completely the opposite of what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to remove the bias to hire a certain type of person and, just look for the person with the skills who could do the best job. But what it did was it actually looked and said, well, if this company is so successful and it's full of people like that, then we just need to hire more people like that. And they actually had to turn it off because it was a complete disaster. I think they had it on for 2 days or 3 days or something. It was such a short period of time. So that was a few years back. And that just didn't work at all, right? But now if you look at most government jobs sites, or also sites like, I don't know how well you know the Australian retail system here, but there's a couple of brands, Woolworths being a very large supermarket chain, and also Bunnings, which is a sort of hardware store chain. They hire enormous volumes of people. There's a lot of roles all the time. There's a lot of people applying. Of course, everyone applying for a job is also one of their customers. So they wanted to make sure that they were getting a really good experience. Sometimes, and I'm sure everyone's experienced it, where you apply for a job, you never hear anything again. You just send your resume off into their system and you never hear, or you get an automated response, but no one ever comes back to you, or it takes weeks and weeks and weeks. And overall, it's a pretty poor experience. So companies like Woolworths and Bunnings that want their customers to think well of them, want to make sure that if they apply for a job with them, even if they don't get the job, they get a positive experience so that they continue to shop with them. So these were some of the first companies to sort of bring AI in. And again, this is where, they could put a advert out on the weekend for, I don't know, someone to work in the supermarket aisles or someone to stack the shelves or something that was a relatively low skilled job, and they know they're going to get maybe 20,000 people apply. The AI will back to all of those 20,000 people, within 24 hours. It will give them a positive or a negative answer in one way, but it will also give them feedback as to why. So rather than just getting a standard email saying thanks, but no thanks, which is what you used to get, the AI tool is actually sort of reading the resume, looking at why that person is a bad match or a good match. And if it's a bad match, it's not just saying to them, no, thank you, we don't want you to work for you. We're saying, no, thank you, we don't want you to work for you because of whatever it's read in that resume, which gives that individual a much more personalized experience. It feels like they feel like they've been fairly assessed. And there is a reason as to why. They're not just sitting there going, I wonder why they never called me back. They've actually got some feedback, which they can obviously go and use to potentially improve themselves if they want to retry again later. So I think things like that, it's not a complicated use of AI, but I just think that creating a better experience and going through large volumes of recruitment, in particularly organizations like that, I think it's amazing.
That's really great. Even the feedback thing is very motivating, because at times candidates are like very vague that what happened, why I'm not a good match. There is no particular reason that is given on behalf of recruiters. So yeah, that's a great way. So when we talk about implementing AI, Nudge Group must have also implemented it. So can you give us an insight that how challenging it was? Like, were there any challenges or ongoing challenges that you are facing?
There's something I would love to do. So again, if you go back to sort of more traditional recruitment models, you'll have things such as chatbots, right, who will actually have a conversation with someone. And these don't just exist in recruitment, they exist in all forms of customer service. But you applying for a job and it doesn't just send you a message back, it'll actually have a conversation with you. Now,
Mm-hmm.
those natural language chatbots are becoming far more advanced and they can have really quite complicated conversations with people before it has to go to a human. I would love to be able to implement something like that. But again, the problem we have with what we do is because we work with, 400-500 different startups, you just can't create a chatbot that could possibly understand those variants in scenarios. Every single one's at a different funding stage, every single one's got different personalities in it. So we can't use it. So I think for me, the greatest challenge is really the market that we work in. And it's a little bit ironic when you think about it. Here we are working with the most dynamic businesses trying to change the world, and we can't use any of the technology because it's all too standardized for us, and we're so specialized we can't use it. So that's probably my biggest frustration is I'm sitting here at the forefront of all these new ideas and new softwares, and yet I can't actually use any of them because of the way that we work. So that's drives me nuts.
So the market is the biggest challenge right now in implementing AI. So do
Yeah.
you have any strategies right now, or have you thought of any strategies to overcome those challenges in future?
I haven't, but the one thing I am trying to do is and I'm meeting some people next week actually about this, is that I believe job boards and advertisement job boards are dreadful. They haven't changed in probably 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you're either on those websites trawling through ads that really don't give you much information, they really don't give you any personality, they all look the same, or recruiters from the other end are trawling through just endless resumes with very little detail on. I am hoping to run a hackathon with Microsoft, and we're talking to them about it now,
Oh,
to
nice.
try and get a whole younger generation in over 4 or 5 days to try and come up with a way of using AI to completely change job boards. And I have no idea in what way. We want to do something that's completely different to anything anyone's ever seen before. People have talked about having kind of reels of people rather than resumes. People have talked about creating mini Netflix shows about themselves. There's all sorts of things. But I do believe that I'm hoping, I think we're going to be running this in the next month or so, that some genius is going to come up with a way of how we can use AI to completely revolutionize that job board and job application process, because I don't think anyone enjoys it in any way, and I think it's very inefficient.
Oh, great. I'll be really looking forward to that. So,
I'll keep you up to date, Kinja. Whatever bubble comes out of it. We're actually going to film the whole thing anyway, so I'll be able
oh,
to send you the
nice.
footage.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Huh. Okay, so can you give a sneak peek, or what do you think the future of recruitment will look like in coming 5 or 10 years?
I think that ultimately what will happen is recruitment. I do believe this will happen. I don't know how, but it will. Recruitment will become an experience that you go through with an AI, and whether that AI is standing there in a hologram form, or whether it's you just talking to a voice coming out of a speaker, I don't know. But I think that we will get to a point where we can create AIs that don't have the unconscious bias of people, but can
Mm-hmm.
also not just understand their skill sets and who's capable, but also be able to read their emotions and the way they behave and the way they deal with stress, to be able to put people in a team that will work really cohesively together. And then what I think you'll get is, we've all worked in teams where there's a couple of people who are just the wrong fit, and they can be incredibly detrimental to that team's success. I think AI will get to a point where it understands us as humans so well that it will actually be able to put us together in teams where we'll be able to work far more effectively, which means that we will be far more efficient in everything that we do. And no one will have to worry about it, and no one will be to blame because it will be an AI doing it. That's what I do think will happen. That will mean I won't have a job. Hopefully, it won't happen before I retire, but we shall see. I mean, I'm very keen to, and if there's anyone out there, please reach out to me. I'm very keen to partner with AI companies because I do believe that ultimately recruitment will just be so dominated by AI. As a business, it would be crazy of me not to try and work out how we can. I'm not a technical person, but how we could partner with someone so that we are not left behind as AI gathers pace. And we've all seen how quickly it's moved since ChatGPT came out, which was really, AI has been around for 15 years, but that was sort of its first public outing, if you like. Since then, it's already changed so much. So, and that's been what has that been? Maybe 18 months? It's not long at all. So in 5 years, who knows where we'll be, Kinjal? Who knows?
Yeah, right. But one thing is certain that AI is really going to change a lot of things in a positive way, hopefully.
Yeah, I do believe so. I do. I think we've got a lot to learn, and I think ultimately, when AI starts to create their own AIs as opposed to us creating them, that's when the magic will happen. Slightly terrifying, but that's when it will also happen.
Okay, so can you give some advice for companies who are thinking to use AI or integrate AI in the recruitment processes?
Cool. I think if you're doing that now, I think what you need to understand is, okay, can I make my process very repeatable? Like if you are going to hire people and you're going to use AI to do it to speed things up, you need to be really super clear on what's important to you and what's not important to you so that it can recognize that in people. And don't try and get too clever with it. And just use it to do the first part of the business. You're still going to have to do the end decisions, but I think ultimately use it as a tool to help you, not to replace you, because it's just not there yet.
Okay. Okay, that was a valuable advice, and I think that's a wrap for this episode of Zealous Talks. We had a great chat about AI in the recruitment. It's exciting to see